The knock came at 6:04 a.m. sharp. Not timid, not neighborly. It echoed like a summons. Michael Devlin, still adjusting to the slower rhythm of retirement, stirred from his leather recliner where he'd fallen asleep reading the Wall Street Journal. His coffee, still warm on the side table, sloshed as he stood. Through the frosted glass of the front door, he saw a silhouette female, square-shouldered, motionless, clipboard in hand. He opened the door halfway, still in sweatpants and a gray t-shirt that said United States District Court. "Good morning," the woman said, all sugar with a hint of vinegar. "Karen Elwood, HOA president. Just doing some early morning inspections. It's compliance week." Michael blinked. Inspections? At 6 in the morning, Karen's expression didn't budge. All homeowners received the schedule. "Didn't you read the memo in your mailbox last Thursday?" Michael hadn't. His mailbox had been empty. He was certain of that. Karen tilted her head and scribbled something on her clipboard. "Your lawn is exceeding length limits. Also, your porch light was on past community quiet hours last night. That's a Class C infraction." Michael frowned. "My light has a motion sensor. And this is a residential home, not a military base." Karen smiled. The kind of smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Well, we believe order breeds harmony. The HOA board has granted me temporary inspection authority while we revise our compliance guidelines." He stepped forward, blocking the doorway. "You're not coming inside." Karen didn't flinch. "No need. Not today, just marking observations. Front hedge is uneven. Also, we don't allow flags with political messaging. I saw a sticker on your mailbox." Michael followed her gaze. A small magnet on his mailbox read, "Protect due process." "That's not political," he said. "That's the Constitution." Karen tapped her pen once, then paused like a teacher grading a disappointing student. "Will review it. I hope you'll cooperate with the community guidelines, Mr. Devlin. No one is above the rules." Michael closed the door quietly but firmly. He didn't raise his voice. Didn't fire back. That wasn't his way. But the moment the latch clicked, a flicker of something passed over his face. Disbelief. Yes, but also something deeper. A sense of foreboding. He'd seen people like Karen before. In courtrooms, on the stand, self-appointed guardians of order. People more obsessed with control than with justice. He walked to his kitchen, poured the rest of his lukewarm coffee into the sink, and stared out the window. Karen was already inspecting the house, across the street, crouching near a mailbox, snapping pictures with her phone. The neighborhood had seemed peaceful when he bought the house last fall, tucked against a quiet lake, with tree-lined streets and a minimal HOA presence. That's what the realtor had said. Minimal oversight, mostly aesthetics, she'd promised. He remembered the closing paperwork. Buried among the clauses was a paragraph about HOA authority but no mention of early morning home inspections. Michael opened his laptop and pulled up the HOA but he had downloaded them after moving in, more out of habit than concern. It took less than 5 minutes to find what he needed. There were no provisions for unannounced inspections. None, not even for board members. And certainly not at dawn. By the time the sun crested the pines behind his yard, Michael had already begun drafting an email to the HOA.com. Measured, laced with legal terms only a seasoned federal judge would naturally weave into civilian conversation. But even as he wrote, a chill settled over him, because he understood something most people didn't. Tyranny doesn't always arrive in boots. Sometimes, it comes in khakis, with a clipboard and a pleasant smile. And when it does, it doesn't knock once, it keeps coming back. The first notice arrived 2 days later. It was folded neatly in a bright orange envelope taped to Michael's front door. The bold print at the top read, HOA non-compliance warning. Below that, in clinical legalese, it listed violations. Grass height, 5.75 inches, limit, 4.5. Porch flag potentially polarizing unauthorized flower pots on the front step. Each item was accompanied by a grainy photo, one of his front yard, another of his porch, and a close-up of the flag magnet barely bigger than a playing card. Michael stared at the pictures for a long moment. Then, calmly, he walked to his filing cabinet, labeled a new folder OA Correspondence, and placed the notice inside. The second letter came in the mail, a $150 fine. Issued for repeat violations and non-cooperative behavior during a compliance check. It was signed, in thick ink, by Karen Elwood. Michael typed up a formal dispute. He referenced bylaws, clearly noting there was no clause allowing arbitrary fines without a documented appeal process. He printed copies, walked to the HOA Dropbox, by the clubhouse, and slid the letter in with a quiet, firm push. He thought that would be the end of it. It wasn't. On Saturday morning, while trimming his hedges, Michael noticed something odd. Across the street, parked just slightly too long for coincidence, was a beige sedan. In the front seat sat Karen, sunglasses on, phone angled slightly out the window. He waved once. She didn't wave back. The next day, a second orange envelope. This one included a photo of Michael's backyard shed, taken through a slat in his wooden fence. The accompanying complaint. Unapproved structure not matching community paint code. Michael stood in his backyard, the wind brushing past his collar. That shed had been there since he moved in. It came with the property. He hadn't touched it. His phone buzzed an email from the HOA. Subject line: final warning for non-compliance. Beneath the message was an attachment. A photo of his recycling bins on the side of the house. The timestamp showed it was taken at 6:18 a.m. That was the moment it clicked. This wasn't policy enforcement, it was targeted harassment. He called the HOA hotline, the generic number listed at the bottom of every letter. A young voice answered, Maple Cove, HOA. How can I help you? This is Michael Devlin, he said evenly. I'm calling regarding a series of unsubstantiated fines and unauthorized photographs taken on private property. A pause. Paper shuffled in the background. Sir, our compliance officer has discretion to monitor visible areas through fences. He interrupted. At 6 in the morning. With a telephoto lens. The voice hesitated. You may want to file a written appeal. I'm not authorized to discuss inspection procedures. Then who is? Another pause. That would be President Elwood. Of course. Michael thanked the representative, hung up, and walked back into his kitchen. He pulled out a small, discreet notebook and began logging every incident. Time, location, description, evidence. Decades on the federal bench had sharpened his memory, but habits were habits. Document everything. Stay composed. Let the facts do the work. Still, something about this felt different. Personal. It wasn't just about violations. It was about making a point. And Karen, she wasn't just enforcing rules, she was trying to provoke him, to make him react, to lose his temper, to forget who he was. Michael stared out the window. The sun was setting behind the trees, casting long shadows over his yard. He saw Karen walking the sidewalk again, clipboard tucked under one arm, camera phone at the ready. He didn't wave this time. He didn't move at all, because he knew this wasn't the last notice. This was just the opening salvo, and he had just begun preparing for the next move. Michael didn't have to wait long for the next strike. It arrived in the form of an HOA meeting flyer, slipped under every door on the street. Mandatory community assembly, HOA president to address concerns, bold letters. Bold intent. The meeting was held that Thursday evening in the Maple Cove Community Center, a fluorescent lit room with plastic folding chairs and an old American flag in the corner. About 30 neighbors showed up, many with half-interested expressions, others already whispering about overregulation and recent fines. Michael entered quietly, taking a seat in the back. He wore a casual navy sweater, khakis, and a calm expression. His court demeanor, neutral, observant. Karen stood at the front behind a collapsible table, flanked by two HOA board members, Ron, who looked like he hadn't blinked in a week, and Paula, whose smile never quite matched her eyes. Good evening, everyone, Karen began, voice smooth, eyes scanning the crowd like a school principal. We've recently seen a rise in non-compliant behaviors, late trash placements, unregistered garden decor, and resistance to community policies. Michael felt a few heads subtly turn his way. Karen continued, I want to remind everyone that living in Maple Cove is a privilege. Order, aesthetics, and unity are what make our neighborhood desirable. We must not allow a few individuals to disrupt that harmony. She paused, waiting for some nods, got a few from newer residents, likely unaware of the full situation. A hand went up. Beth, a single mother who lived 2 houses down from Michael, cleared her throat. I'm sorry, are we still doing surprise inspections? Because someone was in my backyard last week. I didn't receive notice. Karen responded swiftly. We had reasonable cause. There was a complaint about your shed's paint chipping. Beth looked down, embarrassed. But that shed's behind my fence. Karen smiled with practiced charm. We're authorized to view any part of the property that impacts community appearance. Michael raised his hand. Can you point to the clause in the HOA bylaws that grants that authority? Karen's smile tightened. Mr. Devlin, this isn't a courtroom. No, he said plainly, but it is still subject to the law. Silence followed. People glanced between Karen and Michael. Some in curiosity, others in growing discomfort. Karen moved on. If there are no other questions, I'll continue with policy updates. We'll be increasing the enforcement patrol hours. 8. Low murmur rose. Someone whispered, enforcement patrol. Someone else muttered, what is this? A prison block? Karen raised her voice, just enough. We're doing what's necessary to preserve property values. I've given years to this neighborhood, and I won't stand by while certain residents disregard our community standards. Michael didn't respond. He didn't need to. He just listened, watched, documented after the meeting. As neighbors slowly filed out, he found himself approached by a few quiet voices. That wasn't right, one man said. She's going too far. I didn't even know there were so many rules, a woman added. Michael nodded, calm and composed. The rules aren't the problem. The way they're enforced is. That night, as he walked back to his home, under the soft glow of porch lights, Michael felt something shift. This wasn't just about him anymore. Karen had become drunk on authority. Her role wasn't about community, it was about control. She wasn't just picking fights, she was shaping fear. And most of the neighborhood was falling in line not because they agreed, but because they didn't want to be next. Michael stood on his porch for a long time, arms crossed, watching the empty street. His home, once a peaceful retreat, had become a battlefield. But he wasn't afraid. He had taken on drug cartels, government, corruption, and criminal empires in court. He knew intimidation when he saw it, and he knew exactly how to respond, quietly, deliberately, with evidence, with truth, and when the time was right, with the full weight of the law. Saturday started like any other. Michael brewed his coffee, opened his laptop, and reviewed his notes from the HOA meeting. The previous night's neighborhood walk had given him more insight. 3 new neighbors approached him privately, each with similar stories. Random finds. Backyard photos. A subtle fear of speaking up. He was compiling a document. A quiet case. Nothing official yet, just facts, dates, patterns. The same way he'd prepared briefs during his decades on the federal bench. But when he returned from the grocery store that afternoon, something was off. The back door wasn't just unlocked, was cracked open. He froze, 1 foot inside the kitchen. The hairs on his neck lifted. He hadn't left it that way. He never left it unlocked. Slowly, he stepped in. The tile floor had a faint smear, muddy, like someone had stepped in with damp shoes. A small scuff mark, near the baseboard. Nothing appeared stolen. Nothing out of place. But still. He walked directly to the living room, where his home security system console sat blinking. The outdoor camera feed was scrambled. The inside camera, however, was still recording. Michael rewound the footage. His pulse climbed. There she was. Karen, 11:42a.m. She entered through the back door. How? He didn't know, and walked through the kitchen, glancing into each room like she had every right. Clipboard in hand, purse slung tight across her shoulder. She paused in the hallway, peering into the guest bathroom, then the office. She lingered at the bookshelves, picked up a legal volume, set it back, took notes. She was inside for 4 minutes. 4 illegal minutes, then she walked out the same way she entered. Calm, collected, confident. Michael watched the screen in silence. Then he copied the footage onto a flash drive, backed it up to the cloud. Printed stills. He called the police. When the officer arrived, a tall man with a soft southern drawl and weary eyes, Michael handed him the flash drive and led him to the back door. Any sign of forced entry? The officer asked. No. That's what concerns me, Michael replied. She either had a key, or she picked the lock. The officer raised an eyebrow. You think the HOA president broke in? I don't think, Michael said. I know. She's on video. They watched the footage together. The officer's mouth tightened as Karen wandered around the home. She touch anything? No, but she had no right to be inside. That's criminal trespass. The officer nodded. You want to press charges? Michael paused. He wanted to, but something told him not yet. Not today, he said. But I want this on record. The officer filed the report, handed him a copy, and left. That evening, Michael drafted a formal letter to the HOA's legal committee. It included time-stamped stills, a summary of the incident, and a direct accusation of unlawful entry by Karen Elwood. Acting under no official authority, he sent the packet by certified mail and followed up with an email to the board. Ceasing, Karen. The response came less than 24 hours later. A printed notice was posted on the community board near the clubhouse and taped to every mailbox. Attention residents, HOA president, subject to false accusations. Attempts to undermine authority will not be tolerated. Legal action pending. Michael stared at the flyer in disbelief. There was no mention of his complaint. No defense. Just public gaslighting. Karen had flipped the script portraying herself as the victim. And worse, she had the board behind her. He walked home with the flyer still in hand. Stood on his porch. Reread the words. She wasn't just testing limits. Anymore, she was daring him. And she'd just made a critical mistake. Because now it wasn't a neighborhood squabble, it was personal. It was illegal. And Michael had every intention of showing her what real accountability looked like. The envelope was thick, hand-delivered, embossed with the HOA seal. Michael opened it slowly at the kitchen table. Already knowing what was inside. A summons. You are hereby requested to attend a formal HOA disciplinary hearing to review continued violations, threats, and inappropriate behavior toward the board and its leadership. The tone wasn't just confrontational, it was prosecutorial. The irony made him smirk. For 30 years, he'd presided over federal courtrooms. He'd sentenced cartel leaders, white-collar fraudsters, and corrupt politicians. Now, a suburban HOA wanted to hold him accountable for porch flags and flower pots. The hearing was set for Thursday at 7 p.m. location. The same community center where Karen held court like a monarch in folding chairs. Michael arrived 5 minutes early, dressed in jeans and a plain navy sweater. He carried no lawyer, no briefcase, just a worn leather folder filled with evidence. Inside, the board members sat at a long table draped in a burgundy cloth. Karen sat in the middle, lips tight. Clipboard in front of her like a gavel. To her left, Ron, stone-faced and unreadable. To her right, Paula, eyes darting nervously like she'd rather be anywhere else. Mr. Devlin, Karen said, not bothering to stand. You've been called here due to repeated violations of our community policies and for creating a hostile environment for board members and residents. Michael took a seat. Calm, posture straight. You may respond, she said. He didn't speak immediately. Instead, he opened his folder and spread out several documents. A copy of the HOA bylaws, photographs of his backyard. Timestamps included the certified police report. Still images from the security camera footage showing Karen inside his home when he did speak. It was quiet. Controlled. Your accusations hold no merit, he began. Your actions, however, do. Let me walk you through the timeline. He pointed to the first photo. Here, you can see a picture taken over my back fence. A clear violation of privacy. Another photo. Here, the camera captures you inside my home, uninvited. That, Madam President, is criminal trespass. Karen stiffened. Ron shifted in his seat. Michael continued. This is a certified police report documenting the incident. Filed under my name, recorded the day of the break-in. You can confirm the case number with the local precinct. Karen tried to interject. That footage was doctored. I was performing an HOA compliance check. Michael didn't flinch. The bylaws provide no such authority for board members to enter private residences without written permission or a safety emergency. There was neither. He turned to Paula. Check your own documents. The language is clear. Paula looked down at her binder. Didn't speak. Michael leaned back, folded his hands. What's happening here isn't enforcement. It's harassment. You're not upholding standards, you're weaponizing them. Karen's face flushed. She looked to Ron for support. This is absurd. He's turning this into a personal vendetta. Michael gave her a long, even stare. You entered my home. You posted defamatory notices. You've used your position not to serve the community, but to control it. I'm not the only one who sees it. There was a beat of silence. Just long enough to let it sink in. Then Michael stood. Unless this board intends to justify breaking and entering, I suggest we end this now. He gathered his papers slowly, giving them time to react. Paula finally spoke, voice low. I'd like to request a private executive session to review the complaint before issuing any judgment. Karen looked like she'd just swallowed glass. Ron nodded once. Agreed. Michael said nothing more, just gave them a polite nod and exited the room, leaving the folder behind. Outside, the sky was dark, the lot nearly empty. As he walked to his car, a voice called out softly. It was Beth, a single mom from down the street. She stood near the curb, arms crossed over a hoodie. "That was something," she said. "You really went in there and read her like a courtroom transcript." Michael allowed a smile. "She's been trying to make everyone feel powerless." "Sometimes you have. To remind people that power has limits." Beth nodded. "We've been scared to speak up, but after tonight, you're not alone, Mr. Devlin." He didn't say it, but he knew. Karen was losing her grip. And when control slips from someone obsessed with it, they don't go quietly. Karen did not go quietly. Within 48 hours of the hearing, 3 new violation notices appeared on Michael's property. Unapproved modifications to exterior lighting. Mailbox not painted in approved HOA shade maple mist number 224. Improper placement of trash receptacle less than 4 feet from curb. Each was delivered with eerie precision, taped perfectly centered on his door in plastic sleeves. No envelope this time, just accusations on display. Michael removed them silently, one by one, and slid them into the growing folder in his office. The next morning, a city utility inspector knocked on his door. "Are you Michael Devlin?" the man asked, squinting at a clipboard. "I am," Michael replied. "Received a complaint about your irrigation system. Allegedly, it's leaking into the community greenbelt." Michael raised an eyebrow. "Who filed the complaint?" The inspector shook his head. "Anonymous, sir. But we have to follow protocol." Michael walked the man around the side of the house. The system was dry. No leaks, not even a damp patch of soil. The inspector signed off with a quiet shrug. "Looks clean. Sorry to bother you." As the city van pulled away, Michael saw Karen standing on her front porch across the street. Sunglasses, coffee mug, watching. She didn't wave. Neither did he. Later that week, his water bill arrived nearly double the usual amount. Another coincidence. It wasn't just him anymore. He heard from neighbors. Beth had received a citation for a baby swing in her front yard. The Harrisons got fined for a political bumper sticker on a car parked in their own driveway. An elderly veteran named Frank received a demand to remove his flagpole, which had been up since 1984. Karen was cracking down on everyone who had shown sympathy toward Michelor. Even just hesitated at the last HOA meeting. But the worst came. On a Monday afternoon, a sheriff's deputy knocked on Michael's door with a folded document in hand. "Mr. Devlin, I'm here to serve you with a civil restraining order, filed by one Karen Elwood." Michael took the paper. "On what grounds?" The deputy sighed. "Alleged harassment, threats, and attempts to undermine her role through coercion." "Her wording, not mine." Michael nodded slowly, eye scanning the absurd document. "Thank you, officer. I'll respond through proper channels." Inside, he placed the restraining order on his desk and sat back in his chair. It was a desperate move, but a calculated one. Karen wanted to flip the narrative, make herself the victim, distract from her trespassing and her abuse of power. But this time, she had overplayed her hand. Michael immediately called his old colleague, David Kleina, semi-retired attorney, who owed him more than a few favors. Karen filed what David said over speaker. "This is classic HOA power play. She's trying to tie you up legally so you'll back off." "Exactly," Michael said. "I need to respond publicly. Not just in court. I want people to know who she really is." "You want to go scorched earth?" David asked. "No," Michael said calmly. "I want to go surgical. I want the truth to speak louder than her fear tactics." That evening, Michael drafted a public letter. It was measured, respectful, and devastating. He included screenshots of Karen inside his home. He cited the police report. He attached copies of the HOA bylaws she had violated. He ended it with a single line: "No individual, regardless of title or position, is above the law." He sent the letter to the entire HOA mailing list. Blind copied. Anonymous delivery. No dramatic flair, just facts. The next day, the community board near the clubhouse was swarming with residents. Murmurs spread. Phones passed from hand to hand. And then, a letter arrived in Michael's mailbox. No return address. Inside were scanned documents from another HOA, in a different state. The name, Karen Elwood, a resignation letter, and a formal complaint. Karen had done this before, been removed, silenced it, moved on. Michael sat back in his chair. A smile touched the corner of his mouth. The truth always had a way of finding Daylight and Karen's curtain was about to be pulled back for good. The manila envelope sat on Michael's kitchen counter like a ticking clock. No name, no return address. Just one word scribbled across the flap in thin black ink. Truth. Inside were copies of official documents. A scanned resignation letter, a formal disciplinary report. A grievance filed by multiple homeowners in a Colorado suburb, Clearwater Glen HOA, dated 2 years prior. Signed by a familiar name, Karen Elwood. According to the paperwork, Karen had been ousted from her position as HOA president there following a financial audit. The documents alleged she'd diverted over $11,000 in community maintenance funds to a neighborhood improvement initiative that had no records, receipts, or contracts. She never faced formal criminal charge as just a civil settlement, a non-disclosure agreement, and a quiet resignation. She moved shortly after. The resemblance between Clearwater Glen and Maple Cove's current complaints was chilling. Same patterns, same behaviors, same quiet intimidation wrapped in bureaucratic charm. Michael scanned every page and stored backups in 3 separate locations. Then he picked up the phone and made a call not to the HOA, not to the police, but to a young local journalist he'd once helped clear a source protection issue in court. Leah Winters, she answered. Been a while, Judge. Not a judge anymore, he said. But I've got a story you'll want to hear, and it's well documented. 2 days later, it dropped. When power goes unchecked, the rise and fall of a rogue HOA president. It wasn't just a blog post, it was a detailed investigative report. Leah had fact-checked every line, obtained quotes from former Clearwater residents, even dug into county filings that corroborated the entire scandal. Screenshots of Karen's behavior in Maple Code, photos of posted violations, letters, and the infamous break-in footage were included. The story hit like a thunderclap. By noon, the Maple Cove Community Board was flooded with angry residents demanding a meeting. By evening, social media groups lit up with discussions, screenshots, and neighbors sharing their own silent battles with Karen. Beth texted Michael just before sunset, "She's finished. You should have seen the crowd outside the clubhouse. People are livid." The HOA board scrambled. A special session was called the next morning. Karen didn't show. Ron did, but he looked 10 years older and didn't speak. Paula, visibly shaken, offered a brief statement. "We, the board, were unaware of Karen's previous misconduct. We were misled." Effective immediately, Karen Elwood is removed from all official roles pending a formal community vote. There was no applause, no cheering, just murmurs of stunned vindication. Michael stayed home that morning. He watched from his porch as neighbors walked by, some nodding politely, others stopping to say thank you. And then, a black SUV pulled up in front of Karen's house. 2 men in khakis and jackets stepped out, county auditors, likely. Michael didn't need to guess. Leah's article had mentioned the HOA's financials were being reviewed. Karen emerged only once, hurriedly tossing a duffel bag into the back of her car before disappearing behind tinted windows. She didn't look at anyone, no clipboard, no sunglasses. Just a woman unraveling under the weight of her own deception. Later that evening, Michael received a quiet knock on his door. It was Paula. "I wanted to say," she started, eyes uncertain, "we didn't know. We really didn't. She intimidated everyone, even us." Michael nodded. "That's how control works. It's not always loud, it's just constant." She looked down. "We owe you more than an apology. You held her accountable when no one else would." "I just reminded her," he said softly, "that even the people who write the rules don't get to break them." As she walked away, Michael stood alone on his porch. The sun had dipped behind the trees. The street was quiet again, peaceful, but it was a different kind of peace. Earned, restored, and Karen. She wasn't the storm anymore. She was just the story. The next community meeting didn't look like the others. Gone were the sharp-edged voices, the power-posturing speeches, and the air of tension that had haunted Maple Cove's one-sidelic streets. Instead, neighbors filled the folding chairs at the clubhouse with quiet, attentive faces. Some held printouts of the article. Others brought written questions. Everyone, it seemed, had something to say, but this time, they weren't afraid to speak. Karen's seat at the front table was empty, permanently. Ron had resigned the day before, citing personal health matters. Paula was the only remaining board member, and even she seemed changed, humble, more open, weighed down by guilt. "First and foremost," Paula said, standing at the podium alone, "we owe our residents an apology. Not just for what happened, but for how long we let it happen. As of this morning, we have officially opened the board for re-election. We will be conducting a full financial audit with an independent third party. Murmurs of cautious approval spread through the room. Paula glanced at a note in her hand, then continued, "And one more thing. Michael Devlin has agreed to assist us during the transition period as a non-voting legal advisor. On behalf of the community, I want to thank him for his resilience, his integrity, and his patience." The room turned, eyes falling on Michael near the back wall. He stood not to make a speech, but just to acknowledge, a simple nod. No need for grandstanding. The story had already been told. Later, outside, neighbors approached one by one. Beth arrived with her toddler on her hip. "I'm finally repainting the swing set," she said with a grin. "Feels good not to be scared anymore." An elderly man named Frank handed Michael a folded flag. "I took it down when she threatened me. But now, I want you to have it, just for a while." Michael nodded, accepting it carefully. "It'll fly again, Frank, maybe higher." Over the next few weeks, Maple Cove slowly came back to life. The flower pots returned. The flag stayed up. Porch lights stayed on past 10. Kids laughed in the street again, unshushed by clipboard patrols. And Karen, she never returned. Her house sat on the market for weeks, eventually sold to a quiet young couple from out of state. No one saw her pack. No goodbye, no confrontation, just a moving truck at dawn and a final, unnoticed departure. One evening, as the sun fell over the lake, Michael stood on his back porch, coffee in hand, looking out over the trees. He wasn't thinking about Karen anymore. He was thinking about how easy it is to let small fears grow into big shadows. About how silence often empowers the wrong people, and how sometimes justice doesn't require a courtroom, just the courage to speak when others won't. His phone buzzed. A message from Paula. "The board passed a new rule today: no more unannounced inspections. Ever again. Thought you'd like to know." He smiled, typing back a simple reply. Progress. That Saturday, he hosted what neighbors began calling coffee with the judge. Just a folding table on the front lawn, a fresh pot, and a welcome sign that read, "No agendas, just conversation." People came, they talked, they stayed. The community healed. And Michael Devlin, once a quiet newcomer, had become something else, entirely not by force, not by office, but by example. In the end, it wasn't about winning, it was about reminding people that rules are meant to serve, not suffocate, and sometimes, the most powerful verdict isn't delivered with a gavel, but with a calm voice, a firm truth, and the courage to stand alone. Until others join you.